Paula Hawkins is a best-selling author, best known for psychological thrillers. She was born in Zimbabwe and moved to London at the age of 17 and studied philosophy, politics, economics in Oxford. She currently divides her time between London and Edinburgh. And before becoming a full-time writer, she worked as a journalist, reporting on business for the Times, and as a freelance writer for various publications. She won several awards, the Glamour Award for Writer of the Year in 2015, and the Goodreads Choice Award for Mystery and Thriller for The Girl on the Train. When was this? It seems like, a couple of years ago, and then suddenly almost 10 years have passed.
Yeah, it'll be 10 years in January since The Girl on the Train was published. So, yeah,
Yeah. So congratulations and welcome to my podcast. Thank you for your
thank you.
time.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So you've won several awards, and your books are in Portugal. Actually, The Girl on the Train, your debut novel, became a global bestseller and later adapted into a movie starring Emily Blunt, the beautiful and great actress, Emily Blunt. So this novel deals with domestic violence and alcohol and drug abuse, and probably everyone knows your book already. And we have it in Portugal, The Girl on the Train, Rapariga no Comboio. Into the Water, Escrito na Água, also a super bestseller. A Slow Fire Burning, Fogo Lento. And then it just came out, The Blue Hour, Hora Azul. I just read it. Congratulations once again.
Much. Thank you.
And you also, again, you have that twist where, you change the perspectives, and we have here uh, diaries from Vanessa. We have, you want to tell you about your book?
Yeah, so it's a psychological suspense novel. It's set on this remote island off the coast of Scotland. It's a tidal island, so an island where you can walk out when the tide is out, but when the tide comes in, you're kind of cut off. And this place, it's home to just one house. There's only one inhabitant, and for many years, the inhabitant was a an artist, a woman called Vanessa Chapman, who's this reclusive, mysterious, quite glamorous figure. And when the book opens, Vanessa's already died. That's not a spoiler, but the a piece of her art is being shown at a gallery in London. And it turns out that this sculpture, which is made up of lots of different materials, wood and shell and ceramic and bone, somebody notices that the bone in the sculpture is not an animal bone, which is what it says it is. It's actually a human bone. And so this is kind of a mystery starts that they have to the curator of the museum has to figure out where this bone came from, and did she know what it was when she put it there, or was it a mistake? So that's how the novel opens.
Becker, about to be a father by a
Mm.
woman. Well, I can't tell. I'm tempted to tell more, but we can't spoil. So it's about the power of secrets, and I like the way you change the perspectives. You have Vanessa's diary, you have Becker's point of view, you have Grace, her friend and caretaker point of view, and the twist. So congratulations. I'm desperate to talk to someone. I'm eager to talk to someone that's already read it, because we have to talk about the ending.
But we can't talk about the ending.
Exactly.
It's
Someone
one of
else.
the problem. It's a problem with this kind of book is that you never get to talk about the ending. But yeah, well, hopefully some more people will read it and then you can talk to them about it. So
Of course, of course. The Blue Hour, a Hora Azul. And there's also this curiosity, this funny fact I found about you that I didn't know actually. Amy Silver is your pen name for writing romantic comedies.
yes, I wrote them a long time ago. Before The Girl on the Train, I wrote four books under a different name, Amy Silver. And yeah, they were a couple of them did okay. They weren't very successful. It's not really my genre, to be
Okay.
honest. It was always a strange it was difficult for me to put myself into that head because I'm not very romantic, I'm not very funny. So it wasn't the best fit.
And
Crime is much more my vibe, I think.
it is it why that's why you chose a pen name, Amy Silver?
Yeah, honestly, the first one I wrote, I was commissioned by a publisher. They approached me and they asked me to write it, and they had an idea for a character and a sort of vague story arc for her. And so it didn't feel like my story. So I decided I would write it under a different name. Yeah.
Did you know like Meg Cabot? She started as Patricia Cabot because she's a romantic novelist. She didn't want her grandmother to know that she was writing romance.
Well, I think for a lot of writers, a pseudonym can be a use a useful thing because it allows you to maybe write things that you wouldn't usually write, or to have some distance between what yourself and what you put out there because it's obviously very exposing and it's a scary thing to put a novel out into the world.
Yeah. I bet you got this question already because you had Girl on the Train, your debut novel on this genre, and then it was a huge success. So
Hmm.
was it how was it for you to write, the second and the third? Actually, now we know that they were a success, but how does it feel like? The pressure, the fear.
What there was a lot of pressure and it was a daunting experience. I mean, it was also obviously it's a great thing to have a successful novel and it opens loads of doors for you. And I, toured all over the world and, going to festivals, judging prizes, doing all sorts of great things and meeting other writers. But it was really hard for me to actually to even find the time to work when all of that was going on. And I was very nervous about what I was going to do next. And I tried to do something really different and not everyone liked that and so it was a difficult time actually. I feel now I've got quite a lot of distance from the Girl on the Train and I think readers know that I kind of write I do different things with every book. You're not getting the same thing over and over, so but it was for me. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Now your Blue Hour, it has I have the Portuguese edition, and it says Lee
Mhm.
Child said the best Paula Hawkins book until now. Wow.
Yeah, he's been very kind, and yeah, he liked it, so that's great to it's great to hear. It's great to hear.
Of course, and he's not the only one, sure. So you mentioned you judged the awards, you are on book tour again, a lot to write, a lot to do. Now let's get to know the reader. When are you able to read?
Well, I mean, I'm one of those people who reads when they're writing and when they're not writing. I don't read so much crime when I'm writing, but my I read every day. My favorite place to read is in the bath, particularly when I'm here. I'm in Edinburgh at the moment, and my this house is always cold, so I like to get in a hot bath to read.
Wow. Did you have your do you have your glass of wine?
Well, no, because it's often like in the middle of the afternoon. I'll just go and have a bath and read a book.
Okay. So you said when I asked you who would you like to have dinner with, you chose Margaret Atwood.
Yes. So Margaret Atwood is, I mean, obviously we all know Margaret Atwood. She's a magnificent writer. She's an activist. She's outspoken. You know that she wouldn't be boring. When I was 18, I was at school and I read The Handmaid's Tale for the first time, and it just blew me away because at that point you're reading a lot of Shakespeare and Chaucer and Austens and Brontes and that kind of and they're all great or whatever, but then suddenly there's this terrifying feminist dystopia and it was and it read like a thriller. It was so pacey and I just loved it and it was like wow. So I've loved her ever since and everything she does is so she does all sorts of different things. She can write in all sorts of different genres but she's got this really incredibly strong voice. Yeah, I just feel she'd be really fun to talk to.
Of course you would. She wrote her first book at 7.
A prodigy, yes.
And sweet.
I wonder what it was about. We
We'll
could
have to
ask her
ask.
at dinner. Yeah.
Exactly. Sure. So let's talk about the four books you chose, and they're all recent reads.
Okay.
Yeah. So Small Mercies by Dennis, how do you say that? Lehane.
Lehane. Yeah.
Lehane.
So Dennis Lehane, he's an American crime novelist, and he's Small Mercies. I think was probably published last year or maybe the year before. I'm not sure. I read it in
Yeah,
paperback.
2023.
Oh, 23. There you go. And it's set. I'm gonna forget the dates now. I think it's either the 60s or the 70s, and it's no, it must be 60s, in
70s.
fact.
Yeah, it's the 70s in
Oh,
Boston.
70s, because it's the backdrop. It's a crime novel, but the backdrop is the desegregation of schools in Boston. So there's this like political backdrop to it, and it's really beautifully done. And he writes about working class communities in Boston really, really beautifully. He wrote Mystic River, which was made into a movie, which I think a lot of people would have seen. He's written a lot of books, and he writes about those working class communities and about um it's not a cliched view of that. They're not a stereotypical view. They're really nuanced, interesting, thoughtful portrayals of working class communities. And so I loved that book.
But
Highly recommend.
Mary Pat Fennessy, she's working. She's trying to find out what happened to her missing teenage daughter
That's right.
when
Yeah.
when some black man dies mysteriously.
Yeah. So yes, it's about a missing girl, and also there's an attack on a young black man who's just on his way home, and all of this is against this very feverish backdrop in this. It's a hot summer, and they're trying to desegregate the schools, and people are protesting about that. So there's this very sort of feverish atmosphere of like racial tension and then all these other things going on underneath. So it's a really brilliant book.
Yeah, it had a lot of prizes. But it was a Times Thriller of the Month and Sunday Times Thriller of the Month as well. And then Stephen King said it's thought-provoking, engaging, enraging, and can't put it down entertainment.
That's right. Stephen knows.
Stephen knows. And Gillian Flynn also, she added a jaw-dropping thriller, a resonant, unflinching story written by a novelist who is simply one of the best around. And you mentioned his movies. He's written and they were adapted into films. Gone Baby Gone, directed by
Yeah.
Ben Affleck. The Mystic River, you mentioned, directed by Clint Eastwood. And then Shutter Island by Martin Scorsese.
Oh yes, Just Island. I'd forgotten that was him. Yeah.
Yeah. And also Animal Rescue, The Drop. And you know, he likes to produce movies. And you know, he occasionally makes guest appearances as himself in the ABC comedy drama, the TV series Castle.
I haven't seen that. I didn't. Okay, I have to watch that now.
I didn't see it either. My parents are fans. I'm gonna ask them. Did you know that Dennis Lehane is like Hitchcock? He appeared as
Yeah,
himself.
exactly. He always shows up in his movies. Yeah.
So the next book you chose, I read this one and I loved it, and we have it in Portuguese also. Clean, Limpa, the Alia Trabucco Zeran.
Yeah. So that is, I read that earlier this year, and it's this. So she's a Chilean writer, and it's set in Santiago, and it's about this domestic worker, a maid, who's working for this like rich family in Santiago, and something terrible happens. There's a death of somebody in the family, and she is kind of suspected of having something to do with it, and it's never, it's one of those books where you're not immediately sure what's going on, but so the woman who's working as a cleaner is kind of giving her account of what's happened, and it's this really claustrophobic kind of frightening tale about about class and family secrets, and I found it really, really powerful and moving because also this young woman who's living in this home of this rich family and they don't treat her particularly nicely, and she's separated from her mother who's on the coast somewhere and is not well, and she doesn't get to see her, and it's got sort of elements of tragedy as well, and outside the walls of this house, there's some sort of demonstration going on all the time because, again, there's a political backdrop to it. It's a really, really powerful novel. I thought it was wonderful. And I'd never read this writer before, although I got her, she's got a non-fiction book, which I bought as well, which I haven't read yet, but it's called When Women Kill, which is about four crimes in homicides carried out by Chilean women. So I'm looking forward to that as well.
Yeah,
Anyway,
One Woman
I
Killed.
think it's brilliant.
That book won the 2022 British Academy Book Prize for Global Cultural Understanding.
Okay, well, that's on my list. Very cheerful Christmas reading. Yeah, that's on my list.
A submarine, why don't you? And she also had a debut novel, actually just arrived in Portugal. It's called La Gesta, which is The Remainder.
I don't know that one.
Yeah, and also it won it won an award, and then it was shortlisted for the Man Booker Prize in 2019. It's called The Remainder. It actually just got to Portugal. Subtração.
Okay.
So I'll recommend
Great.
that to you.
Another one. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I love fun facts, and I just noticed one out of by chance. And her birthday is on the 26th of August, same as you.
They're twins. Amazing.
She's tiny bit younger, but that doesn't matter.
A little bit, yeah. Not twins, but perfect.
Barely. So Clean, in Portuguese, Limpa, by Alia, Trabucco, Zeran. Now we have another choice of yours, Caris Davis, Clear.
Yeah, this is really beautiful. It's another book set on an island, like my one, but it's a Scottish island as well. It's a remote Scottish island, more remote than my island.
And in the 19th century.
It's the 19th century, during what is known in Scotland as the clearances, which is when the mostly English landowners moved the tenants off the land because people who'd been farming there for generations, they were forced off their land so that rich landowners could graze their sheep. And so it's a source of great anger, and it was a terrible thing that happened to these people who'd done nothing wrong and were just suddenly kicked off their land. So this novel, Clear, is about somebody who's going to the small island to tell this man who's lived there with his family for generations that he has to leave. But things don't go quite as planned, and this guy gets there, and anyway, I won't tell you what happens. It's not a mystery, but it kind of unfolds. And it's a really beautiful, beautiful novel. It's beautiful about landscape and about connection to land, and about friendships and love affairs too. So there's a love story in it. So and it's very short. I like a short book. It's a very beautiful novel.
Okay, Clear by Caris Davis. You know that she also super awarded. She's Welsh, and her debut novel West was shortlisted for a Rathbones Folio Prize, longlisted for the European Literature Prize, won the Wales Book of the Year for fiction, and she's also awarded for her short stories. Her second novel, The Mission House, also named by Sunday Times Novel of the Year. So she's multi-awarded. Do you know her? Because she lives in Edinburgh, same as you.
No, I don't know her. I didn't know she lived here. No.
Yeah. She lived and worked in New York and Chicago for 12 years before moving to Edinburgh.
Okay, I'll look out for her.
So Caris Davis, Clear. Another book you chose, her fifth novel, Evie Wyld, The Echoes.
Okay, yeah, I love Evie Wyld. I'll read anything she writes. So she is a Scottish writer, I think, or she lives in Scotland anyway. But
She's
she's also
Anglo-Australian.
yeah, she's also spent time in Australia, and a couple of her novels are set in Australia, or at least partly set in Australia, including this one. This one is mostly in London, and it's a ghost story, and it's a love story, and so it's this. Yeah, I mean, I don't like believe in the supernatural, and usually, if you said a ghost story, I wouldn't want to read it. But it's very clever, and yeah, it's sort of half narrated by someone who is no longer there. Um, but there is also a kind of an echo back to Australia to earlier generations of this family who we meet in London and what happened, what went on in Australia, and what this person comes from. And it's sort of about generational trauma and what we carry down with us in families. Um, but yeah, she's a really wonderful writer, and she does really clever things with structure. She wrote a book called All the Birds Singing, which kind of in which part of the narrative goes backwards and the other part goes forwards, and it meets in the middle. She's very, very clever. So I'd highly recommend it.
All her books are also awarded. All the Birds Singing was her second novel. It won the Encore Award at the Miles Franklin. Her debut novel, After the Fire, A Still Small Voice, also awarded, and her third novel, The Best Rock, won the Stellar Prize. So this, back to The Echoes, it's her fifth novel, and the premise is very, well, almost sweet because Max is a ghost. You mentioned him, who doesn't the man doesn't believe in afterlife, and then he dies.
Yeah, exactly. He doesn't believe in it, but then he's like, "Oh, I'm a ghost. Damn." And he's still kind of living in their flat that he lived with this woman that he loves. And there, feels kind of so it's kind of this heartbreak. And so you see him kind of watching her kind of try to go about her life after he's gone. It's very beautiful. It's very clever.
It's a great premise. The Echoes by Evie Wyld, super awarded author. So now I have, a question for you. Small Mercies by Dennis Lehane, Clean, Alia Trabucco Zeran, Clear by Karis Davis, and The Echoes by Evie Wyld. Choose one.
Oh, that's mean.
You can choose another one and cheat. I'll let you.
No, I'll probably if maybe Clear is my favorite. Maybe
Okay.
maybe today it's my favorite.
Tomorrow we'll ask again.
Tomorrow will be something different. Yeah.
Okay. So usually we're on a fast pace here, but great recommendations on your behalf, and thank you for that. And I also at the end leave you recommendations as well.
Yeah, great.
And I'll write them on the description of the episode, but for you. So have you read An American Marriage by Tayari Jones?
I have read Tayari Jones, but tell me the premise because I've definitely read one of her novels, but I can't remember if it's that one.
Okay, so Roy and Celestial. He's a successful artist. She's a businesswoman. They're newlyweds living in Atlanta. And then
Is he accused of a crime?
he didn't commit, exactly.
Yes, I have read it. It's wonderful.
Oh.
That's the one I've read. It's fantastic. Yeah.
So okay, so I would be right in my recommendation, but then you read it. And then the first book you mentioned, The Small Mercies, it reminded me because of a missing teenager. It reminded me, I interviewed in this podcast Cecilia Ahern,
Yes,
the author from P.S. I Love You. And as you know, I asked for books you loved. And she said she chose three. And then she said the fourth one was Everything by Karen Slaughter.
Ah.
Have you read Karen Slaughter?
I have read Karen Slaughter. I haven't read all of them, but I have at times read some of them. Yes, she's brilliant. She's
I
a
was
pro.
going to recommend you also the Great County series, the Will Trent series, and I just read the standalone. She's coming soon to my podcast as well. So I read Pretty Girls. There's a missing teenager.
She goes. Okay, I'm going to write that down because I haven't read that.
Okay, you'll prepare to suffer.
Okay.
Great. And then Lehane Moriarty. I always recommend Lehane Moriarty. Have you met her, the Australian author? Big Little Lies.
I haven't met her, but I know who she is. Big Little Lies, obviously, and
My Husband's Secret.
lots of things. She's big superstar.
Okay, and Truly Madly Guilty. I recommend you.
Oh, I don't know that one.
The title is amazing and the book is better because it's always the same with Lehane Moriarty. Something happened and you don't know what. Something happened in the present, and then you go back and then follow the characters and the plot.
Yeah, brilliant, really brilliant.
So this one isn't, and even as an expert reader, that things I always think I'm how do you say I always think I'm going to guess.
Yeah.
And with her,
you
I don't.
don't.
Same as you, Paula. So I won't take much more of your time. Thank you so much for having me. And The Blue Hour, it's your latest book, and also in Portugal, Hora Azul. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.